Now, as all of you in the UK know, it's been a very, very tough time economically for this country. Um, I think up until 4 or 5 years ago, things looked very, very rosy. The economy was growing at 2.5 to 3% a year, and it seemed almost an unstoppable economy. It looked as though the next 15, 20, 30 years were going to be very bright. But amazingly, in the last week, we look at the debt as a percentage of GDP has risen above the psychologically very important 100% level. And what's really, really particularly worrying is that the UK may be getting to debt levels which Italy and Greece had not so long ago. Of course, since then, Italy and Greece have got a lot worse, and we know COVID-19 has had a lot to do with it. Um, but there also have been other things at play in the UK. It seems with when the Brexit vote came that we'd have a pretty there'd be a deal, everything would go quite smoothly, but instead there has been 3 years of infighting between the opposition and the government. And consequently, we had an election last December where the Conservative Party won, and it seemed as though perhaps that might settle things a little bit in the UK. But this Brexit question has come up again, and it's causing a lot of consternation, in particular because the government has said that by the end of 2020 there will be a deal or no deal, and there'll be no extension. I think the other problem, which a lot of us didn't anticipate, is that Brexit would have caused so much money to be lost. So in the last 3 years, Brexit has cost the UK approximately about 135 to 140 billion pounds, and indeed that's more than the UK has paid into the European Union over the last 40 years. So that has actually also put the debt levels up as well. Also, what is quite strange is that Britain, is making a fairly clean break with the EU, but the government here seems to be acting almost like other Western European countries in its attitude. So, for example, let's take Italy, France. It's investing a lot more in the public sector than it was. It's becoming a lot less of it seems like a market economy. It's a lot less capitalistic than it was. It's actually less capitalistic than the previous Labour governments, who have always been considered left. And now the Labour Party is actually very, very left. So it seems to me Britain is going in a direction a little bit less of what I call a free market economy and more into state spending. COVID-19 has been a bit of a disaster. The OECD has predicted that the UK having we think locked down a little bit later, and perhaps according to many people not handled the pandemic as well as other countries such as Germany, South Korea, to name but two. That's put the UK on the back foot. So a combination of dealing with COVID-19, the uncertainty with Brexit, has put the UK a little bit on the back foot. Now, what does that mean? Like you, I mean, I have a lot of my shareholdings are in the UK. I'm sure a lot of you have invested in the markets here and in companies in the UK. But what should you be doing now? And I believe you should start diversifying. I think the UK is definitely changing tack. It's changing course, and you're likely to see over the next 5 to 10 years less of a free market economy and a lot more socialism. Which, fine, if that's your beliefs. I'm not condemning it. I'm just saying it's potentially a less attractive country to invest in than more free market economies. That said, Britain still has a big advantage. Um, Being an English-speaking country, that always be a big advantage. It's still the number one country for foreign investment. When I mean foreign investment, I mean foreign investment per capita. So that is an amazing thing. But going forward, I just want you to think of potentially diversifying your portfolio a little bit away from the UK. Now, how the UK does in future also depends on whether there's a deal at the end of the year. I think if there's no deal between the UK and the European Union, that could be quite damaging to the UK, in particular because of the COVID situation in China. And we all thought, I think, before this pandemic, that the UK would do quite a seamless deal with China, and that would have perhaps compensated a little bit with the lack of a deal with the European Union, but that is not the case at the moment. There's also a lot of uncertainty in the US. Will Trump win or lose the election in November? Potentially, if he loses the election in November, it may be difficult for the UK to get a good deal with the US, particularly because the Democrats want the UK and Ireland situation to be sorted out. So there are going to be a lot of difficulties going forward. As well, I think a lot will also depend on what our other countries' perception of the UK is. Has the COVID-19 and Brexit situation damaged the UK permanently? We all hope not, but I think foreign investors are less keen on the UK than they were 5 years ago. It almost seems that the UK has slightly become a little bit more insular in its in dealings. So again, future will depend a lot on the Brexit deal. It'll depend a lot on how much this government veers towards a more, what I call, socialist approach. And also if it can start to if the government can kind of get its act together. I think a lot of people will say it's on the economic front, it's not done pretty well. And even before this this pandemic, if we go to February 2020, the UK was already in a technical recession. In other words, the economy had already begun to contract in February. So I'll leave it at there. Let me know your thoughts. I do hope, I'm not being too pessimistic, I hope the UK does recover. But if I were you, I would diversify your portfolio out of the UK. Keep some money, obviously, in UK shares, but do diversify it into other markets. Remember also, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The pound has really plummeted over the last 3 years. As I speak, it's 125 against the dollar, 111 against the euro, and it's gone down a lot against another basket of currencies, which I think obviously when your currency is low, it does show you're not doing well. And I'll use Australia's currency over the last 10-15 years has done superbly well, and this reflects the fact that the country has been in a boom. So anyway, I'll end it for today. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks and goodbye.